Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. DCA is here. I know that it's been, some time since I made a YouTube video, but, you know, things happen. Life kicks in. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster lately, but, I'm just making sure that my house is in order and I'm crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. So I hope you didn't miss me too much because it's time for another daily analysis. So taking a look at AMP on the weekly chart, we can see a few things that are both bullish and also bearish. So let's start with the bearish cases, right? Bearish, last week, we all know that, AMP experienced a whole bunch of FUD due to the cream finance exploit, which explains this bearish pin candle that we saw last week, right? Now, another bearish thing, taking a look at this weekly chart, is that we are still sitting slightly below the Fib 618, which is this level right here. And also, we can spot that by looking at where we are right now with this week's candle, right? So this week's trading candle, I'll zoom in just a little bit for you guys. This week's trading candle is right here, right? Now, the bullish case scenario is that one, we are still sitting above the bull market support band, and two, we opened up this week's trading candle above the close of last week's trading candle. So last week's trading candle, it closed at the 0.057 level. And this week's trading candle, it actually opened up at 6 cents. So, we're pretty much even with two bullish cases and two bearish cases on the weekly trading view, right? So let's take a look at the daily to see what's going on there. Now, on the daily, I said this last week. I said that anytime that we break a market structure, like we saw here, let's just zoom out just a little bit for you guys to see. We had this huge, this massive bullish pennant, right? Now, we did break this market structure, but I said that anytime, markets break a market structure, 80% of the time, we will see a guaranteed retest to get back to the support zone of that market structure. And that's exactly what AMP has been doing, right? We called this earlier, but we are approaching a key resistance level. So right now, our resistance level is at the 0.059 mark, roughly about 6 cents. We can even classify 6 cents as part of that key resistance. But two things could happen. So one, we could either, break above it, or two, we could get rejected and then fall below. Now, if we do break above it, it's likely that we'll touch the 0.066 level or possibly the 0.062. Now, 0.062 is guaranteed because historically that's been one of our resistance zones, right? Now, if we do break to the upside, then, it's guaranteed that we will ultimately retest to make sure that that 0.062 mark is no longer resistance. We want to make sure that we flip that resistance into support. Now, if we get rejected here, right, it's likely that we'll come down and form a higher low somewhere around the 0.058 level. And if we do break to the downside even more, it's likely that, we'll come down to the 0.058 level and possibly break down, to the lower 5 cent mark. And, worst case scenario, we could always come down back to the 0.047 mark, right? Now that's a long shot. That is the worst case scenario, right? But, right now, what we're seeing right now is, the retest to get back to the previous support. For anybody that's sort of like, oh, well, this is FUD. I don't know what's going on with Ant's market. Da, 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 da. Nothing about the market sentiment will explain this. Only technical analysis will explain this, right? So if you understand a little bit of TA, you'll know that this is pretty normal anytime we break out of market structures, right? So that's what we have going on with the daily. Last but not least, let's take a look at the 4 hour to see what's going on here, right? So on the 4 hour, we can see a few things happening, right? we had this low of 0.047 when all of the initial FUD happened with Cream Finance and sort of putting the blame on AMP. But what have we seen since then, right? We've seen a low, we've seen a higher low, and we've also seen a higher low right here, right? Now, the significant thing about having these higher lows is that three higher lows actually confirms a trend, right? If we're seeing these higher lows, that means that we are trending because we have three of them, right? Three higher lows lets us know that we are starting to put in a trend to trend to the upside. And that's exactly what AMP has been doing, right? We pushed up to, the 0.062 level back here, September 2nd. Fast forward to today, September 6th, we push right back up to that same level. And, right now on the 4 hour, we do see, a little bit of bearish presence, but, I think this will be healthy. Ultimately, I think that if we can form a higher low above this resistance zone, somewhere above here, then we will be in good shape to, put in possibly a higher high and close above this 0.062 level, which will set us up to continue trending upward all the way back up to our previous resistance at 0.075, right? So I think the 4 hour really gives us the best visual of what's happening with AMP, right? So that's what we have going on with AMP from a TA perspective. But, just sort of wrapping all of this up, right? Some significant things have happened over the past previous days, right? So one, ruler protocol is shutting down. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this or not, but if you take a deep dive into their medium, basically in a nutshell, what happened was their core devs left. Now, why is ruler protocol important? Well, one, ruler protocol is a DeFi lending and borrowing platform that AMP was available on, right? Ruler protocol is not a top-notch DeFi lending platform, right? Ruler protocol is actually a underdog, much like Cream Finance, right? So putting all of this together, why is AMP associating its valuable and limitless use case token with underdog DeFi lending and borrowing platforms? It doesn't make sense because Flexa is not partnering with underdog platforms in the traditional finance space. Flexa is partnering with top tier established companies in the traditional finance space. So wouldn't you think that AMP will want to partner with top tier DeFi lending and borrowing platforms like Aave or Maker or Compound or even Celsius Network, right? These are the top four DeFi lending and borrowing platforms. So it would behoove AMP, in my perspective, to partner with these top tier platforms in the same way that Flexa is partnering with top tier established companies, right? If AMP continues to partner with these underdog platforms, I don't think this is really going to set them up for success, right? The two teams are not completely different. They're not completely different. So you would think that they would have the same strategy. I think that, going forward, the AMP core devs, they really need to think about who they choose to partner with, especially in the DeFi lending and borrowing space. We know that, core features of AMP is still getting developed. That information hasn't readily been released to the public yet. So, it would make sense for them to partner with established DeFi lending and borrowing platforms because one, they have top-notch grade A security to prevent any type of exploits like we saw with Cream Finance. Two, they have a huge market cap. They are the leaders in the DeFi lending and borrowing space. And three, they have a huge amount of users. So it's really just a win-win situation, right? If AMP can get on these platforms, it exposes their existing users to AMP and vice versa. AMP holders get exposed to these platforms where they can earn yield, they can generate income, and they can also leverage AMP as collateral for these platforms. So I think, going forward, the AMP core team definitely should think about who they choose to partner with. and try to, go after some of these top tier DeFi lending and borrowing platforms in the same manner that Flexa goes after top tier established companies in the traditional finance world. So that's what I have for you guys today. I hope that everybody enjoys this holiday weekend and, time off from work. So until next time, DTA is out.